The Lord bless you. The Lord bless you and all yours. The Lord bless us all that we might be a blessing. Yes? That's what we've been called to. If you happen not to be a Christian, we would love you to give your life to Christ. You've probably already gotten to know plenty about him. You now admire him. Maybe even moving in the direction of, well, more than admiring. We'd love you to commit yourself to him in faith. We would love you to speak to someone and have them speak to you about the scriptures and how you need to become a Christian. Would you not do that? Wish you would. We're going to be staying around John chapter 6. Mentioned last time that Jesus has healed a lot of people. He has fed a multitude. The people have seen these events. They love the benefits of it. Once more, I've no criticism at all for that, nor does Jesus. God made us humans. We need to eat and drink, and we need all these things that humans need. And God provides all of those. He begrudges no one. Sunshine or rain, fruitful seasons, and hearts that have gladness in them. It's all his work. So we have no criticism for people who work hard and earn money honorably, and you know what I mean. So they got the benefits of them. What they didn't see, and that is what is central in the thought of our Lord Jesus Christ, they didn't see the meaning of it all. They didn't see him. They didn't see what the events were as signs. They said things about him. They said things about the God who sent him. They said things about his purpose. And they said things about his call. And they said things about his indispensability. Now, as they watch, they're in the wilderness, as they watch the food coming from, who knows where. They know he's the center of it all and the source of it. They think Moses, wilderness. And they think, we can make him king. Chapter 6 of the book of John. When Jesus knew, the text we'll read later, when Jesus knew that they were going to take him by force and make him king. That's chapter, what am I reading? Yeah, here it is. That's chapter 6 and verse 15. Jesus, knowing that they were going to take him by force and make him king, he takes himself away. So they saw all the benefits. They rejoiced in all the benefits, and so they should have. What Jesus wanted was for them to see the benefits not as an end in themselves, but to tell the truth about God right from the beginning. And the last time we were together, we read Deuteronomy chapter 8. How does it come that they were in the wilderness? Because God brought them out of Egypt. How come he brought them out of Egypt? How come he brought them across the Red Sea? How come he took care of them in the wilderness? Because he made a promise. Because he spoke. And in making the promise to Abraham, This is chapter 12, chapter 15, chapter 22, all in Genesis. Yes? When he says to Abraham, I will make you the father of a multitude of people. And then later, Abraham, I'll make you the father of a multitude of nations. I will give you property. I will do this, that, and the other. He made all those promises. And because he made all those promises, Israel remained alive. How is it they survived Egypt? How is it they survived the Red Sea? How is it they survived the battle with Amalek in the wilderness? How is it they survived the battle with the Canaanites and on and on and on to end up in the land? Man doesn't live by bread alone. Man doesn't live by physical needs alone. Man doesn't live by the sword. Man doesn't live by bombs, by smart things, by great governments, by reform programs. Man doesn't live by these things in the end. Man lives because God says, live. The human family fell. That's the Genesis narrative. We rebelled against God, and that's called by Bible teachers down the centuries the fall. We said no to God. We'll take care of ourselves. We'll provide for ourselves. We've never gotten over it. And do you know what happens? God gives us all these things. Love it, love it. Oh yeah, good, nice, lovely things. Once more, I have no criticism whatever for people wanting food and drink and this and that and the lovely things. God is interested in human well-being. So, but you know what happens? We get all those things and we forget and we think we got them for ourselves. There are no self-made people. No self-made people, for good or ill. I'm a sinner. I didn't become a sinner all by myself. I was helped, and I have helped others to be sinners. That's what we do. It's what we do. But it's true also from the good perspective. I'm a decent sort of man. I do good things as well as bad things. I think good things as well as bad things. You know what I mean. You're that way also. But the good? Am I self-made? No, there are no self-made people, for good or ill. Whatever goodness there is in me, it's the work of God, and it's the work of God through people, through events, through scriptures, Sunday school teachers, grandparents perhaps in your case, parents, mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, good friends, decent men, good senators, great Congress people, all of the people, sociologists, people who, all over the place, who do good. Did I tell you that George Gissing, who was a contemporary with Charles Dickens, you know Charles Dickens, don't you? Of course you do. George Gissing was poorer than Dickens ever dreamed of being in the early days. And by and by, he was able to earn a little bit. And he was a social critic, as was Charles Dickens. You need to read Dickens. I think everybody should be forced to read Dickens if they want to. Gissing, who has also written materials. He tells us that he was out walking one day in a wooded area, a glen. He said it was a gorgeous day. Sun was shining. Everything was fine. And he came across a boy. I don't remember how old. I'm thinking, though, 8 or 9, something like that. He said, I saw a boy leaning against a tree. This actually happened. This is not just a story. He said, I saw a boy, 8 or 9, leaning against a tree, sobbing. Poor boy. A day like this when boys ought to be leaping and jumping and laughing, happy lunatics. This one was sobbing as hard against a tree. His son went up to him and asked him, Why are you crying? He said, my parents sent me on an errand. This is back in the 19th century, the later 19th century. My parents sent me on an errand with a sixpence, and I lost it. Sixpence lost, and a world comes crashing down. Gissing said, I put my hand in my pocket. I took out a sixpence and worked 6 penny worth of miracle. Isn't that a great story? He gave a boy a sixpence, and the sun started shining. The birds started, what was that? That bird singing. The grass was softer. The world changed. I don't know what that boy's life was. Gissing never knew, I take it, and said no more about it. But I'm wanting to guess that he had a tough life, as they did. And I'm wanting to guess that it must have been a gloomy world he lived in. But and why would that be? Why would he think so? Because day after day he saw bad things, maybe experienced bad things, and that. But on that day, he met a stranger. He met a man who wanted nothing from him. Someone who didn't want to hurt him, wasn't going to manipulate him. Someone who said, What? And then did that miraculous thing. Give him a sixpence and change the world. You know that has happened to me? Not precisely in those terms, but down the years I've met people like that. Have you? Wouldn't you love to be a person like Gissing in that moment? Haven't you done some lovely things in your life? You regret a lot of things you have done. You have remorse about those. They weren't good. But haven't you every now and again done something really beautiful? And it doesn't make any difference who did it. You did it. And on that day, you made the world brighter for somebody. What, did you pay them a bill? Pay a bill for them? Get on the phone and tell them you're thinking of what? Something lovely you did. and you change the world. Well, I don't know now where I'm going, but I'm going to get back to the point in a minute. You don't live by bread alone. You don't live by the mere physicals. You need all these lovely things. You need speech. You need promises kept. And that's what helps us. And when God brought them through the wilderness into the land, he said, as he was bringing them there, I don't want you to forget. Do you know what happens? This is the point. I'm back on the point. You know what happens? We get all these lovely things. We rejoice in them. And the temptation is real bad to forget where they come from. We think because we work hard, maybe 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day, sending our kids through school or getting food or whatever it is, and we're exhausted. We think, we've done it. But no, God has enabled us. All down the years has enabled us and kept us on our feet. Yeah. Here's what God says. Via Moses, here's what God is saying. The Lord is bringing you, this is Deuteronomy 8. Now I'm in verse 7. For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land of brooks, of water, fountains, springs that flow out of valleys and hills, a land of wheat and barley, of vines and fig trees and pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey, a land in which you will eat bread without scarcity, in which you will lack nothing, a land whose stones are iron and out of whose hills you can dig copper. When you have eaten and are full, then you shall bless the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. He said, eat, drink. I give you all these things to rejoice in. I care not just for your souls. I didn't make you just souls. You're not spooks. I care for your well-being. And so I supply your well-being. Then he says, beware, 8:11, that you do not forget the Lord your God by not keeping his commandments and his judgments, his statutes, and command you this day, lest when you have eaten and are full, and have built beautiful houses and dwell in them, and when your herds and your flocks multiply, your silver and your gold are multiplied, and all that you have is multiplied, when your heart is lifted up, and you forget the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt from the house of bondage, who led you through the great and terrible wilderness, in which were fiery serpents, scorpions, thirsty land, no water, who brought water from you out of the flinty rock, who fed you in the wilderness with manna, which your fathers didn't know, that he might humble you, and that he might put you to the test, to do you good to the end. Then you might say in your heart, my power. Do I look like somebody right now? Who do I look like? Then you might say in your heart, my power and the might of my hand has gathered me this wealth. And you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he swore to your fathers as it is this day. Then it shall be, if you by any means forget the Lord your God and follow other gods, and serve them and worship them, I testify against you this day, you'll perish. That's Deuteronomy 8. You need to read that. Won't you do that? I don't know where you are when you're watching this, but Americans just recently got them a new president. Britain, not very long ago, they got themselves a new prime minister. All over the place, they're choosing leaders. I'm not opposed to any of that. You who are believers, I do understand why non-believers wouldn't take the view we do. That makes sense to me. I don't say it's right, you know that. But I understand that. Let me tell you what is more difficult for me to understand about us, the people of God. That we know who the provider is. We sing who the provider is. We teach who the provider is. That we know. And yet, we forget. So, here is Jesus in chapter 6. He's telling them, though he doesn't quote the words from Deuteronomy 8, verse 3, he doesn't say, I want to tell you that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word, every promise, everything God says that he will do. He does it. That's what keeps you alive. But he is saying that all the way through John chapter 6. And he's telling them, not only am I the provider of the social, economic, health, this, that, and the other things that you need, my Holy Father is the provider of all of that. And I'm reminding you, as I do these things, that he cares for your well-being. You must not forget when you eat and drink and enjoy health and all of that. You mustn't forget that God and God alone is the provider and that you are alive. And you have reason to rejoice when you have reason to rejoice. That you have reason to rejoice because God keeps his word. What about all the people that are hungry and dying? And we'll talk about that maybe the next time or the time following. For now, I'm speaking to those who believe and have good reason to believe. Don't get sidetracked. You don't live by presidents. You don't live by prime ministers. You don't live by secretaries of state. You don't live by treasurers. You don't live by good reform. You don't live by social this, that, and the other. You don't live by that. Though, one more time, there's nothing wrong with these. And we cannot live without some structures such as these. We cannot. And God knew it and created the structures. Even if the structures are corrupted, the structures themselves are what God created. Do you know why you live at this moment and I live at this moment? Because the Word of God, the promises of God, the commitment of God is what keeps us alive. Peter will say, obey the king. Do what you're supposed to do, whether it's under the king as supreme or the governors as those that are sent by him, 1 Peter 2. But don't worship them for pity's sake. Let's not worship our smarts. Let's not worship. Or how shrewd we are. How militarily powerful we are. You believers, you who teach, are you a teacher and a preacher? Let's not make little of the things that people need. God help them. They're in their multiplied millions. And they need food and drink. They need some freedom to breathe. They need to have rights. God has intended for human beings to have some rights to live. He cares for their well-being. To dismiss those things and make them to be nothing is not only nonsense, it's contrary to the Word of God. And it's easy when you're well-fed to dismiss people who are crying out for food. Well, there are some things more important than food and clothing. Yeah, right. If I've got money in my pocket and enough to eat and a good bed to sleep in, good friends around me, I don't feel starving. I don't feel lonely. I don't feel humiliated and abused. But if I were them, if you were them, is that good grammar? If I were them, you were them, you think you'd be, doesn't matter much. No. Nevertheless, and we'll say something about the poor here, okay? Nevertheless, do not believe that Mr. Trump, or had it been Mrs. Clinton, or whoever is the boss wherever you are, don't believe that you live by them. For if they're good, if they care, if they're caring for you, if they're caring for the needy and all the things and they're trying to do good, this is the work of God in them, and we should be thanking God for the work He does in them. And we should be thanking them for doing the work of God, even if they don't credit Him with it all. The surgeon does a good job on my child. I don't ask him whether he's premillennial, postmillennial, or amillennial. I know that God has gifted the man, and the man has done his job well, and I'm happy about that. But do you know in the end why we live? And there's living and living, as you know. Do you know why we live? We live because God speaks. And as He did in Ezekiel 16, looks at a baby, all bloody, salted, no salt, nothing, just a baby dying there. And He says, live. And the baby lived. Sweet sister and good brother, do you know why we live? We live because God says, live. We'll take that up next time we're together. John chapter 6. Thank you for being here. The Lord bless you.